Please. Hi, everybody. My name is D. Lisa West. I'm a dream doula and an artist. And this is
Drasko Raicevic, who is lucky to be your guest today, to be in your world today.
Drasko. You and I worked together. You were my coach for 6 months, and I admire you so much. I would like to just pick your brain today and just chat about stuff.
Let's do it. It's always exciting to be on the flip side of this, especially because we met with a podcast as well. So yeah, I surrender to your world, and let's dive right into it.
I love it. So you do at least a podcast a week. Is that your schedule these days?
Well, so I don't actually have a schedule like that is set. I do have a schedule where they get released. They get released, I think, Wednesdays and Fridays. But as far as like people booking them, so I run a pretty different podcast in that I don't really interview the guest. I actually just coach the guest live on air. So I like my assistant does all these reach outs to people that I think would make like good guests, and then whoever wants to go on this crazy thing to be coached live on air, they come on and I coach them. So there's always an inflow of those individuals, and then we just have a schedule that's twice a week at this point. So yeah, until people stop saying yes to being coached live on air, I think it's a schedule that I can maintain.
Yeah, and you have to be pretty confident in yourself to think it's okay to be coached live on air. And
It's not
guests
for
ever
everybody.
say, "Oh my God, please don't put that up"?
Well, I think I'm very clear with regards to like what people can expect, and there's been multiple times where like people will like sign up on like for things and not really read it. So like I as much filters as I put in between to like know, hey, this is like what you're signing up for. People fall through the cracks, and I make sure before we start the recording, like, okay, like you're about to be coached live on air. We're gonna dive into like the stuff that's vulnerable. Are you sure you want to do this? And there's been people that are like, oh no, like let me just listen to some more episodes and I'll come back. I'm like, okay, cool. So they do happen from time to time, not that often. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty self-selecting. Like you're either going to be for this or you're not, and respect either choice. But so far, everybody that has been on, from what I can tell, has left better than before they came on. So
Right. Well, and that's how I met you, and that's how we created our coaching relationship. Is that mainly how you find your coaching clients then?
yeah, it is has been and currently is the primary way that I do find coaching clients. I'm expanding that this year because like it can't really scale beyond my capacity to do like the podcast and then also like coach my clients. So as my client base is growing, I want to devote my attention to them as opposed to just strangers on the internet. So that is going to change this year, but so far it's been a pretty unique way to do like client outreach and like lead generation, or however you want to call it.
I love that so much, because you not only are getting something that you can share with the general public, they can listen, anybody can listen to your podcast. By the way, let's tell people what it's called.
Yeah, so anything in my world is UpLevel Mind. So whether you want to find me on
UpLevel
Instagram,
Mind.
yeah, UpLevel Mind. So my website's uplevelmind.com. The podcast is UpLevel Mind. So everything's branded with UpLevel Mind. So if you want to enter my world, just look up UpLevel Mind, and you can find me through that.
And eventually you'll probably get tired of doing those podcasts, but it's a glimpse into the work you do. And even if they never talk to you again, there's a benefit they get out of talking to you for an hour.
Correct. It's kind of like okay, like let's be honest, most people get onto podcasts for exposure, right? Like
Yeah.
I want to piggyback on your audience, so I'm going to provide this value, and then hopefully somebody from your audience likes what I do and I can make a sale out of it. So that makes sense. And I think in general, like it can work if you're very selective with like what type of podcast you show up on. So it's kind of like my to be honest, I don't even know what my audience size is, because I don't actually, like, one of the commitments I had to myself when I did this. So actually, I'll give you the story of the podcast and kind of how it started. So initially, it was my girlfriend that's like, well, you should really do a podcast. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't like really listen to podcasts. I prefer actually visual. Like if I'm learning something, I prefer to do it through like YouTube where I can see video, just how my brain works. I'm like, is it really an integrity for me to like do this podcast? She's like, no, you should like really do it. And I'm like, okay, like let me like see if I even have anything to talk about. So before I even did like the first podcast, I just said, okay, if I can't come up with 100 ideas on like what to talk about for episodes, there's no point to do this. So I sat down, I started like writing out like 100 titles of episodes, and I got to like 104, and I was like, okay, well maybe I do actually have something to say. So the first 10 episodes I actually recorded is just me talking into the microphone around what, like, 10 of these ideas. And then this idea of like deliver results ahead of time. It's like a marketing mantra as far as like, how do you want to do marketing that like pulls people to you? Well, like if you can deliver results ahead of time, then you can like it's a good strategy. And I was like, okay, well, how can I do that with coaching? Because I came from the fitness and nutrition space, and I owned a brick and mortar weight loss center for 10 years. So I'm very familiar with that whole sentiment of like, everybody can be a personal trainer, but like not everybody's really like that good. It's like, how do you discern like who's a good coach? I'm like, I saw the same problem in like life coaching as I did in personal training. So I was like, okay, well, realistically, if I can't take a stranger and provide them with an insight or a breakthrough, then like what am I doing here? Right. So that was like the instigator of it. And then this idea of, okay, well, like driving results ahead of time is what I want to do with this podcast. So if people have the experience where they're like, okay, well, this is actually really useful, then there's not really a lot of convincing that I need to do for us to work together. Right. Like, I mean, that was obviously your experience as well, but it's just like, I can put the best copy and marketing, like I'm going to get you all these results, but ultimately in a sea of coaches, it's like, this was my way of demonstrating whatever it is that I could say. So that's really how the podcast started. And then when I realized it was a lot easier to generate conversations with potential clients this way, because most people will not say like, be offended. Well, I mean, there were some, but you know, I've had some hate mails like, how could you possibly do this? I'm like, okay, you could just say no. Like, it's totally okay. You don't have to do it. You know, like it's all good. But anyway, it's just like, it's easier to get people into that conversation. And yes, there are some friction points, because it is like, if you have an established brand or like people know you in certain circles, like I can see how it would be concerning to like show up and for lack of a better term, like air your laundry. But at this point, there's been enough of an influx that hasn't really been that big of an impact. It's just not the people I'm going to be serving it at this time. So that's kind of the story of how the podcast actually started.
That's beautiful. I'm just like, my brain is like, ooh, 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 ooh. Obviously, someday you'll probably be done with your podcast, and all of your clients will be so happy with you that they'll send you their friends and
I mean,
coworkers.
that's the idea. I
Yeah,
mean, I could, I've thought about that too. And like a potential avenue would be like, if I end up having coaches that I train to like do what I do
right.
for like the brand, I could see the podcast actually being a good training ground for them to like get used to this type of whatever coaching or whatever. So I have ideas on where it could potentially go like down the line, but yeah, listen, if it stops at whatever number of episodes, like that just means I have another way to get clients, and I'm totally fine with that too.
Yeah, I love the fact that in 1 hour people know who you are, because you've really dug deep into whatever it is they're stuck on, or whatever their story, whatever they're saying out loud, and you call them on their ball.
Yeah,
So
I'm very good at that. So yes, that is
you
true.
are, that's your superpower.
It
Is
is.
in fact, I used your exact wording on a client recently, where she was saying something that was just so unconscious and negative, and I was like, whoa, let me hold a mirror up to that. Well, that's a Draskoism. Let me hold a mirror up to what you just said. And they're like, what? I just said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So beautiful. There's another coach I follow and I admire, and she does 3 and 6 hour, 3-day workshops, all day workshops, 3-hour workshops. And I went on just to be friendly and support her. And at the end of it, I was like, this is so many hours. What am I doing? Take a break. I'm going to check my email on my phone while I'm listening to her. And then she says at the end of the day, listen, I have a program, blah, 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 blah. And if you don't know if I'm the right fit for you after 6 hours together, we're not a good fit. But by now you should know, who I am and how I work. And if it resonates with you, maybe we can work together. But you condense that whole concept down into 1 hour, which is amazing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it just comes back to like, especially as we move into like the thing that's most ubiquitous is information, right? Like at the end of the
Yes.
day, like, I don't know if you record this on video or is it just audio, but like I have a bookshelf of like books, behind me. So it's like everything that I teach, at the end of the day, somebody has explored, written about. Like, I'm actually a very bad inventor. Like I'm very bad at coming up with like original things. I'm extremely good at synthesizing like things that already exist and like interconnecting them and combining them in ways that make something unique to me. So all that to say is like the transformation is the part that matters, especially in the type of coaching that I do, where the result is really unique to every single person that I work with. In that, yes, we're gonna, everybody's got doubt, everybody's got self-sabotage, everybody's got like worthiness issues, but how they manifest for you and what they're stopping specifically in your life experience is very much unique to you. So can I talk generally to that in some sort of marketing? Yes. And I am getting better at doing that. But ultimately, all that really matters for you is that I can move you through those things. So again, the podcast ended up being a good avenue to really show you, hey, here is all of the stuff that's really blocking you right now. And the invitation is like, do you want to get rid of that or you don't? Right? Like it's less about me and it's more about your readiness to actually do it.
Right.
I've proven time and time again that I can move people beyond those things. So that's really where it has matured to now.
How long do people normally work with you?
Generally, like you, about 6 months. So like I generally
Oh,
work in 3-month containers, and then there's usually something that is still left outstanding or is like the next thing that they want to overcome. So like generally 2 rounds, I would say, is about maybe 75% of my clients stay on for 2 rounds.
yeah, I found that most programs that are 3 months long just get people started. And then we kind of throw them to the wolves or they continue to do the work. But 3 months is a good amount of time to start a transformation, but to not really, I don't know, dig it in too deep.
Yeah. And I think what I would say to that too is like, I'm not the first person people see. And what I
Mm,
mean by that is like, pretty much all of my clients have gotten business coaching before because I work with entrepreneurs. So they've gotten mentorship on the business side. They've already invested and or done various versions of their own self-development. So whether that's other coaches, workshops, seminars, retreats, therapy, whatever, like generally they've done a lot of things prior to seeing me. And they're now at this point where that has stopped working to get them to the next level. And the reason why I bring up that point is like 6 months seems like, oh my God, I got to work with somebody for like 6 months to like fix all these things. But it's like, in the best case scenario, if you've had a limiting pattern for 10 years, like 6 months is actually a very short amount of time in comparison. Because like
right.
6 months of improvement, whereas you've had 10 years of fine tuning the limits of this pattern. Like you've had 10 years where it's been screwing up your life in some way, shape, or form to improve out of that in 6 months, 3 months is actually a very short amount of time. And because I work with entrepreneurs, they're very good at taking that blank slate that ends up coming out as a result of our work together, and then really painting on top of that exactly what they want to create, right? Which is generally more impact, more money, more fulfillment. So, it's a matter of how you're looking at those things that I think is very important when it comes to your expectations of what transformation actually is like.
I'd love you to talk for a few moments because I'm thinking about your brick and mortar, where you helped people in the health and fitness um, diet industry into this now more esoteric work, working with the mind. Do you find that they're similar, or that you use tools from what you did before with people now?
Yeah, 110%. So I didn't know I was doing life coaching in nutrition at the time that I was doing it. So my studio, what it ended up becoming was like what I internally to myself kind of called like we're the place for the hard cases. And what I meant by that is like individuals that have had 20 to like 100 pounds that they needed to lose, that they've probably been trying to lose for life. Okay. So it's like perpetually dieting and failing and then living in all of the consequences of a lifestyle that led to that amount of weight gain. So we did the exercise, we did the nutrition, and then we did a lifestyle coaching all in one place. So really, I used weight as the vehicle to explore, let's just say, the surface level version of all of the things that I'm doing right now. So yeah, in many ways, I think I've like sharpened the axe in those 10 years of really working with those types of clients in what I'm doing right now. And yeah, there's a lot of similarities because now I really just use the vehicle of business to help heal the like human behind the entrepreneur so that they can be better business owners. Like that's essentially what I do. And the reason that I'm in this work right now is because like after 10 years and 4 staff and 200 clients later, I ended up imploding that business right before the pandemic started. And the reason that it imploded, like it was all great on paper, but I began making very stupid decisions ultimately from my woundings. Like I was trying to, like I never asked myself, what is it that I actually want? I just knew that I didn't want to work in a 9 to 5 job, which is what I did when I graduated. And I wanted to prove that I could be a successful entrepreneur. So it didn't matter that I was not really aligned with continuing to grow this business. Like it was a proxy for me to define my own worth. Also, I was thinking that like if I could help enough people, then I'll probably be able to like help myself. Like at some point it'll be enough. And those two big like worthiness, like there was other things in there as well, but that like emotional blind spot, or like I called it at that time, like the emotional constipation of not being able to recognize those things, just made me make such stupid decisions that ultimately like got the business to implode, and was really the catalyst then to be like, okay, well now you really have to look at yourself and explore why this happened, which kind of fast forward into these 3 years that I've been diving into my own work and then subsequently transferring it to my client work. That was really like the story that goes from the actual brick and mortar to the work that I'm doing right now. It's like a lot of what I see myself doing is like stopping other business owners from having to crash their businesses or not even get them off the ground, depending on like what level they're at, because they're avoiding this inner work. So like I know it from many different angles.
Wow. So you deeply understand how your own psychic wounds or your own emotional trauma, whatever you want to call it, was what killed your business. Wasn't anything else. It was you.
Yeah,
It was
110%.
you and what you were thinking about in your head.
Like there's like the, tactical things that I did wrong, of course, but I know what was the feeding factor in all of those. Like I have enough self-awareness, especially now, to know like, okay, what really fed that decision was like these woundings. It's like a business, a relationship, no external can fill the hole in your soul, right? And I was trying to have the business be that thing. So, other people have that same wounding, but they go the opposite direction where they have like wild success and then no fulfillment. This is just the flip side of that same coin. Like for me, if I could have a PhD in anything, it would be in self-sabotage. And like for me, it was always the flip side. Like all of my patterns were always around kind of the freeze or the fawn aspect of it. So a lot of what I did was self-sabotage the success of that studio. So yeah, I it's probably also why I'm so good at cutting through people's BS, because I'm like, there's not a lot of stuff you can bring to the table that I haven't already done and or explored within myself when it comes to these
Right.
things.
So you can
So
say, oh, I've been there, done that. I see
100%,
you. Yeah.
100%.
Do people ever ask you about health and wellness things while they're working with you, or you just focus on business only?
Um, if it comes up, I will like comment on something. It's never as detailed as it was before of like how much protein should I eat and like all of that.
Right.
It's more maybe in like the habit stages, right? Like, and again, it's I work with a different type of clientele where like they're already have a certain level of self-motivation that is like different than the clients that I used to work with before. So there's a lot less of this like accountability and hand holding that's needed to like get them towards the finish line. And that's not a judgment call on anybody else. Like that's their process. And again, that's part of their wounding that got them in the lifestyle issues that they're experiencing. But as far as like the entrepreneurs that I work with, they already have a good level of self-motivation. Yeah, we always wane in it. There's always like room for improvement, 100%. So where the stuff around like lifestyle comes in is usually in the form of like self-care. Like when am I neglecting my own self-care in order to achieve X, or in just the formation of habits, right? So usually entrepreneurs will go into like go hard, then crash. It's like the yo-yo dieting equivalent of, let's just say, productivity. So like they blow themselves up more often than not. So a lot of the work we do is like, okay, well, what's the standard consistent output you can have that honors how you want to live your life, move you closer to what it is you actually want, make enough room for your own self-care, right? Like it's more about stabilizing and creating a new normal than it is about the specifics of, lifestyle or nutrition.
And you live in Canada, right?
Correct.
Or I should say you live in Canada, eh?
Also correct.
Do you have mostly clients, Canadian clients, international clients, or what?
I guess majority is states, but it's international. Like at this point, I've worked with people from like France and South Africa and Australia. So it's been all like literally all over the world, which has been pretty cool as well.
Because you just talked about lifestyle and how entrepreneurs might just go like way up and then way down, working a lot and then crashing. Do you see the difference in people that live in the US working really hard and are like, we don't take vacations, no time off, looking at their email at midnight, versus other countries? Is it ubiquitous to the USA, or like people tell us it is, where if you live in Europe, you probably take vacations and you think it's a good idea?
Yeah. So I haven't personally seen it in my own coaching practice that I could like really confidently point it out. Do I think culturally that there is definitely a difference? Yeah, 110%. I think US is at the top as far as like burnout from overwork.
Yeah.
Do I see it here? So I live in Toronto, which is like one of the bigger cities obviously in Canada. So it has a lot of those same types of features. Maybe it's not as extreme as like a New York, but yeah, I would say culturally that's probably accurate. But I can't say it from firsthand experience.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious about that because, I have relatives that live in Northern Europe, and they're constantly not worried about money.
Mm.
And planning very long vacations to lovely places in the wintertime. And
Yep.
like vacation. Yeah, yeah. Well, if there's one piece of wisdom you could give people today at the end of this conversation, what would it be, Drasko?
Only one.
Well, you could give us several, but what have you got that you could just throw out there for people to ponder?
Okay. Honestly, okay. Well, one that I like that I guess I use often for this type of question is that idea of when people show you who they are, believe them.
Mm,
And I think that coincides so much with like a lot of like we mentioned multiple times, like I'm really good at not buying into people's BS, like the stories that they tell themselves. Like even beyond that, what I'm really interested in is like the reality of the situation, right? Like this is your story, but then these are your results, and then this is what you want. The reality is this is where I, from the outside looking in, see the disconnect between all of those. So like, what's the real reality? Well, what's the real reason that this is being created? So the reason why I like that quote of like, when people show you who they are, believe them, is so often we argue against reality because of these beliefs and these shoulds, right? Like this person should have been nicer. It's like, no, he shouldn't have, because he wasn't. Like that was the reality. And when you can accept the reality, you can also accept the fact that it is your thoughts about the event that actually dictate your experience of the event. And of course, that's easy to understand, but so much harder to do. But I think it's encapsulated by that quote, because people are usually the first thing we tend to like look to paint red flags green, right? It's like, oh, but no, it's not like that, or this, what, it just, there's always some rationalization. So I think when you can begin to really accept that quote and the gravity of it, it opens up a lot of doors to a lot of other things. So I always like that one, and it's a visceral one that a lot of people have experiences with, because there's always somebody in your life that at some point screwed you for something or other. But we're also to blame because we enabled a lot of it. So that's the one that I would add to this.
so when people show you who they are, believe it.
Yep.
I love that. Thanks for your time today, Drasko. I really appreciate you and the work that you do in the world. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And thank you for having me on. This is a fun conversation to do.
All right.